I injected vasodilators in my junk, and boy was it an interesting time. I'm going to explain my experience with what you could consider a pretty advanced erection hacking strategy of 3 major compounds which you actually literally inject in cavernosal tissue in the penis. There's a spoiler alert, it fucking wouldn't go down. Now, this strategy is kind of a last resort strategy for people with erectile dysfunction, or it could be an interesting strategy to have an incredible night if you're like, I don't know, a swinger, or it could be an interesting strategy to have an incredible night, like to give your woman like exactly what she wants and more, because it'll definitely be more. So strap in, my friends, because you're about to learn what happens when you inject vasodilators in your junk. Okay, announcements, and these are actually important. For those of you nootropics heads, I have just reduced the price of the Cortex stack to an even $25. That is insane because the normal price is $45.99. We're doing this for a couple weeks. We have a ton of inventory and we just need to get rid of it. So my loss is your gain right now. The code for this is 25 Cortex altogether, and you get literally a bottle of a sick nootropic for a mere $25 due in the description of this video. Secondarily, I just launched the second speed course of what's going to be about 20, and it's called Fix Erectile Dysfunction Now. It breaks down targeted erectile rehabilitation, biohacking, unique, never before discussed penile rehab protocols, and a lot more to get your junk firing on all cylinders. You can get it now. It is live at livecortex.com down in the description. If you got erection issues, this is the tell-all course. You will need nothing else but this course to get it resolved. Okay, friends, so in my never-ending quest to biohack sexual function, or just to experiment, I mean, we do videos about PT-141, which is one of the most crazy drugs out there, I stumbled upon something called Trimix. Now, Trimix is actually a targeted treatment for erectile dysfunction in men that has become very, very popular over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. And the interesting thing about it compared to other erectile dysfunction or an erectile enhancing strategy is that this isn't like, okay, you take, 5 or 10 or 20 milligrams Cialis and then, within 4 hours you get a pretty strong erection and maybe it's good for sex. It depends on how bad your erectile function is. No, this is nothing like that. This is no matter what, like with a 95+% success rate, if you want an erection on demand, inject Trimix and you will have one. So I use this, a couple times in some, casual encounters, we'll call them. And I want to talk about my experience, but first let's break down exactly what this is. Okay, so Trimix is a combination of effectively 3 vasodilators. These are going to relax smooth muscle in the junk and ultimately promote blood flow. And they are the following. They are papaverine, phentolamine, and prostaglandin E1, right? You may not have heard of these before, but they're very effective for inducing erections. And what the whole basis, so we're going to talk about the mechanisms of action in a second, but what the whole basis of Trimix is yes, you are literally injecting these 3 chemicals into cavernosal tissue. So you're injecting it directly into the eggplant. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but in all cases, if you use the combination of these 3 drugs together for, inducing a very powerful erection, then you can get, and it typically comes with, if you ask for it, an auto-injector. The auto-injector is very easy to set up, so you're not actually having to take a needle and then grab your junk and then inject your junk. You're basically lining up the auto-injector in the right place and pressing a fucking button. So it makes it way easier, and it just it removes this whole notion of, I'm going to put a needle, in my dick. It's not quite that. If you get the auto-injector, you set it up straight, you merely press a button while it's lined up in the right spot, it goes in, is relatively painless, and you're done. And before we get to some of the mechanisms of action of these chemicals, which I want to quickly break down, I know what you're really looking for is what happened, and here's the answer. 3-hour boners, okay? Substantially hard, superficially manufactured erections that are certainly more strong than usual, even stronger than a 20 milligram dose of Cialis, that are the absolute epitome of being a goddamn maverick. I mean, look, whoever woman you're with, you gotta warn her. Or don't warn her. I mean, this stuff is so strong that post climax, in a good degree of cases, you are still going to have an erection. In other words, the erection inhibiting effect that the penile base of prolactin, which releases post ejaculation, will have no effect on erection quality. You're just going to stay erect. All right, so the three chemicals, let's break this down, right? Number one is prostaglandin E1, and prostaglandin E1 mediates relaxation of corporal cavernosal tissue by activating prostaglandin receptors and subsequently increasing cyclic adenosine monophosphate, which is CAMP, basically energy levels in the corporal smooth muscle. So just to give you an idea of where exactly this happens, I mean, this is the cavernosal tissue, both over here where it says erectile tissue, it's basically on effectively the 10 o'clock and the 1 o'clock. But, if you look deeper on this image to the right over here, this is the cavernosal tissue. You actually have it on both sides, the corpus cavernosum. And that's where the injection takes place. That's where the vasodilation takes place. And that's where you get like these remarkable boners, man. Now, when you think about erections, smooth muscle relaxation is the primary thing that you want to happen so that blood flow can get in and that blood flow stays trapped. Now, papaverine, this is the second chemical that's in trimix injections, blocks cyclic adenosine monophosphate and CGMP phosphodiesterase to raise the concentration of CAMP and CGMP, which further releases MLCP that dephosphorylates myosin, resulting in smooth muscle relaxation and increased CGMP that activates PKG and leads to smooth muscle relaxation. If you don't understand any of that stuff, all good. You're really targeting smooth muscle relaxation. And the last chemical in trimix is phentolamine, which relaxes penile corpus cavernosum tissue by adrenergic and non-adrenergic mechanisms. So basically what it's doing is it's a competitive antagonist, reversible competitive antagonist at the alpha 1 and the alpha 2 adrenergic receptors that are in your junk. What this triggers is vasodilation and vascular smooth muscle function. And then you get a very powerful erection. It's actually a drug that was studied for reducing hypertensive crises as well as basically reducing or eliminating vasoconstriction. Now, the really interesting thing about this stuff, and by the way, I'm not promoting them, Olympia Pharmaceuticals is like one of the companies, if you wanted to try it, if you had ED or if you just wanted to experiment, you could just basically explain to them that you're having erectile issues and they will more than likely prescribe it to you, is that rather than going systemic, okay, like tadalafil goes systemic and as a result you get smooth muscle relaxation everywhere. You may end up with some reflux. You have some congestion or nasal symptoms, and some people, depending on the dose, tadalafil, Cialis, even sildenafil or Viagra gives them headaches. And some people, it can change their heart rate and all this stuff. That's because the drug goes systemic. Whereas these three chemicals you're injecting directly in the cavernosal tissue, it does not go systemic. So it's basically a side effect-less way to induce very, very strong, powerful erections. Let's talk about how it works. Again, I don't want to seem like I'm promoting these guys because I'm definitely not. I have no affiliation, but I would like to talk about how quickly this onsets because you're not going to believe it. So basically after injection, you're talking about, after a brief massage of the area to try to disperse the chemical around the corpus cavernosal tissue, you're looking at vasodilation and increased blood flow in 5 minutes or less. And this is actually true. Post-injection, you can actually literally feel like a half chub coming on and blood filling the junk within like a minute, bro. It's actually wild. It was like one of the craziest experiences when I did it for the first time. I'm like, all right, here we go. Here goes nothing. Fucking Geronimo. I got the auto injector. I inject, and literally in under a minute, I'm starting to feel it fill up, and I'm like, dude, this is real. Now that sounds amazing, right? But where I suppose this could go wrong is like if you don't really need erectile function enhancement, but you're just doing it as a biohack and maybe you're going to a party or maybe you just really want to, give your girl a good night or whatever, is that because you are superficially manufacturing vasodilation in the junk without any countermeasures for that, you could end up with a 3 to 4 hour erection. And past 4 hours, you're kind of running the risk of tissue damage, and worst case scenario is you end up in the ER, having to have your fucking junk drained. That has happened to guys on trimix. So it's important to start at the minimum effective dose and then work your way up so that doesn't happen. So I actually did have to, experiment with the stuff and see, okay, 5 units, what's that like? 10 units, what's that like? And I ended up at 12 units of this stuff. Here's what the vial looks like. If I can get this to focus. There we go. So we'll put that away and actually have to go store this in the fridge. In the event that you end up with a boner that is like out of control and it's not going down after a considerable period of time, you're starting to get worried, they actually do send you an antidote, if you will. And the antidote is typically pseudoephedrine, okay? And that promotes vasoconstriction. So it's essentially just going and reversing all that vasodilation, therefore reducing erections by directly stimulating alpha adrenergic receptors. So I've not had to do that. Basically after climax, even though I was certainly more erect than usual, it kind of went back to normal and everything was fine. But that's because I dialed the dose in appropriately for me, which is just about 12 units of the stuff. So let me break down, a few instances in which this would be useful, right? To inject a very, very powerful, very targeted set of vasodilators to, no question, induce strong, long-lasting erections. Number one, an acute situation to please a woman. This could be your girlfriend, it could be a date, it could be just maybe a sexual partner that you have. Like if you're just, you really want to give her an hour, 2 hours, and because you have a very, very strong erection, you want to strike all the chords, if you will, then, Trimix would be a good strategy to use for that. Somewhat comparable to how people use PT-141. Number two, a date in which, you're going to have a date, but you've had like some ED issues. Maybe you're on TRT, your hormones are fluctuating, or one thing or the other is happening. You have an underlying issue that you haven't fully resolved and you're trying to figure it out, and you just want to be confident that everything's going to work, use Trimix because it's going to work. Number three, wanting to give your partner that you're with, that you're consistently with, just an incredible time, once a week or twice a week or something. If you just guys want to go for an hour and a half, or go back to back and really, really please her, then yes, Trimix injections would be very useful for that situation. Number four, looks like I got like dyslexic and didn't number this right, but number four, casual parties. Now this is something that, I don't know, maybe 10% of people are actually into, like swinger events and sex clubs and the like. That's just, if that's your thing, that's your thing. Certainly in the Reddit forums around this, there are a lot of people that do that and use this for those types of gatherings, if you will. And number five, let me just change this because my OCD is totally kicking in now, as a legit treatment for ongoing ED, as, and this is critically important, folks, as you are trying to solve the underlying issue, whether it's getting your TRT protocol dialed in, getting on TRT, raising your testosterone, managing estrogen, doing penile rehab, getting your prolactin level, whatever the situation is that's causing you to have ED, as you're resolving it, you basically have Trimix, okay? And that's something that, instantly, again, you'll be able to induce erections and not have to have that, psychological concern or that sort of confidence crushing anxiety that, you're just not going to be able to perform when it comes time to perform. So, would I suggest doing this? I'll tell you what, I'm just going to be frank with you guys. For people that have ongoing, long-standing erection issues, 100% this is a very useful drug to take, or set of drugs. There's no erection like Trimix erections. You're not going to be able to induce the same thing with the same duration with the highest dose of tadalafil that you can tolerate. It's just not comparable at all. Remember, you are injecting vasodilators directly into the cavernosal tissue. There is no, and it doesn't go systemic, so it's great. There's no other more direct way to induce erections other than, Trimix. And look, again, just going to be frank with you guys, if you're a biohacker type like me that likes to explore and likes to understand things and this fascinates you, a client of mine told me about this and I'm like, you know what? That's interesting. It's fascinating. I start reading about it. I start understanding the mechanisms of action of each of the chemicals and my brain's already like, I got to get it. So, if you're that type, again, read the instructions, understand what the chemicals do, understand the instructions that come from, the pharmaceutical company, whether it's Olympia or other people prescribe this too, but your doctor can prescribe this as well. Fully understand what you're doing so that you don't induce 4-hour-long erections that could potentially end you up in the ER having to have your shit drained. But I can tell you this, for either of those cases, person with long-standing ED while they're trying to resolve it, or curious biohacker type, which it's safe to say is like all of us here, this stuff is literally second to none. There is no better option right now for inducing instant erections than using Trimix. There just isn't. And now you have an actual review of it, of, your favorite biohacker who actually has the stuff and has used it. It's pretty epic. But remember, emphasis on resolving the erectile issue as you use Trimix or as you use Tadalafil. I mean, look, if your erection quality isn't great, there's something or many things wrong, and you really have to tend to it. And I just built and launched something I think has been a long time coming. I've been talking about it for a while and haven't actually exposed the penile rehab protocols, the Fix Erectile Dysfunction Now speed course, which goes through targeted erectile rehabilitation biohacking, never before discussed penile rehab protocols. This is my protocol that I use with clients and that I've found very effective. And we're talking about using modern erectile biohacking technologies, as well as inducing penile vascular optimization via things like neovascularization, literally creating new blood vessels in the junk. And yes, there is a way to do that. And yes, it's effective. We even discuss OTC supplements, regular stuff that you wouldn't know that is causing erectile dysfunction, like stuff that you might be taking that you should not take anymore. We go through optimal ways to balance hormones to get testosterone in the right place, because that's a pretty important part of erections, my friends. And a host of other things. This speed course is epic, and it is live now at livecortex.com. So if you've been suffering with ED at any capacity and you're sitting here spinning your wheels, go get the course. No more research you have to do. Everything is in this course. All right, again, for you nootropics heads, the Cortex nootropic stack right now is literally down to $25 a bottle. Okay, I got the tap on my shoulder. We got some inventory we've got to move. It's a situation in which we got to get rid of some product. My loss is your gain right now. Okay, $25 for a bottle of Cortex right now. This stuff is normally $45 per bottle. You're getting an incredible deal, and you can do it down in the description below. The code for that is 25Cortex. All right, everybody, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you. I appreciate you taking the time to be with me in my adventures of junk biohacking. Much more content to come soon, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.